The alien observer had been chosen for a duty no one else wanted. He was young, trained in the art of watching and reporting, not in fighting. His name was Kalen, and his task was simple, or so he had been told. He was to observe the strange species called humans in their war, to take notes, and to return with knowledge. His commanders had promised it would be routine. But when Kalen stood on the high ridge overlooking the battlefield, he felt his chest grow heavy. The humans were not like any warriors he had ever seen. They were loud, fierce, and filled with something beyond rage. Their armor was scratched and battered, their weapons simple compared to alien technology, yet they fought as if nothing could stop them. Fire burned behind them, smoke rising into the sky, and still they pushed forward. The clash of steel and the cries of pain filled the air. Kalen's eyes stayed on one figure. A human girl, young but armored, her face streaked with ash and sweat, stood in the middle of the chaos. She swung her blade with precision, defending those around her. When a giant alien beast, one of Kalen's own people's war slaves, charged at her, she did not hesitate. She moved like fire itself, slipping under its massive claws and driving her blade into its throat. The beast roared, collapsed, and the humans cheered. Kalen flinched. This was not supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to break, to fall, to show their weakness. That was why he had been sent here, to witness their defeat and to record their collapse. Instead, what he saw filled him with unease. From the ridge he scribbled his notes, but his hand trembled. The girl shouted to her comrades, her voice cutting through the chaos. They listened, they followed, and they fought harder. Kalen realized with dread that humans did not fight like soldiers of other species. They fought like creatures with nothing left to lose. They fought with hearts that refused to die. Behind him, another observer whispered, "They are madness given flesh." His voice shook with fear. No order, no rhythm, only chaos. Kalen almost agreed, but something deep inside him disagreed. He saw patterns in their chaos. He saw strength born of desperation and unity born of pain. He saw that every man and woman fought not just for themselves, but for the one standing beside them. That was not madness. That was something stronger. The battle raged on for hours. Blood soaked the earth, fire consumed the sky, and the humans never stopped moving forward. Kalen watched their shields lock together against spears, watched them carry the wounded even while arrows fell around them, watched them stand when any other species would have surrendered. He should have looked away. He should have reported what his commanders wanted, that humans were unstable, reckless, doomed to fail. But he could not lie to himself. His chest hurt with every scream he heard, every sword that struck, every desperate cry of survival. At one point, the human girl lifted her eyes, just for a moment, toward the ridge. Kalen froze. For an instant, he thought she had seen him, though it was impossible from that distance. Her eyes burned, fierce and alive, and Kalen felt something he had never felt before: shame. Shame that he stood on a ridge, safe, while she bled and killed and fought for her people. When night finally fell, the battlefield was a graveyard. Thousands lay dead, the fires dimmed, and yet the humans remained. The girl sat with her comrades, her armor dented, her hands trembling from exhaustion. They had survived, though they should not have. Kalen could not sleep that night. The sounds of the battle echoed in his ears. The image of the girl slaying the beast replayed in his mind. The cries of the wounded haunted him. He realized then that something inside him had changed. He had been sent to watch, to remain distant, but the humans had reached into his soul without ever knowing his name. When he finally wrote his first report, he paused before the words. His pen hovered over the page. He knew what his commanders wanted to read. They wanted proof that humans were weak, that they were no threat, that their wars were nothing but pitiful struggles. But Kalen could not write that. Instead, he wrote the truth. He wrote of their fire, their unity, their stubborn refusal to fall. He wrote of the girl who stood against the beast and won. And though his hand shook, he admitted something he never thought he would. I was forced to watch humans in war. What I saw broke me. Kalen set the report aside, his chest heavy. He had only seen the beginning, and already he feared what would come. He had not just witnessed a battle. He had witnessed a storm that no one could control. The morning after the battle, Kalen stood on the ridge with tired eyes. Smoke still curled upward from the ruined field below. Bodies lay scattered, human and beast alike, and the ground was dark with blood. The air carried the bitter scent of ash and iron. He should have felt nothing. He had been trained for this, prepared to watch war as a distant scholar. But he felt everything. The screams, the clash of steel, the sight of the young girl standing tall, they all weighed on him like chains. His fellow observers murmured to one another. Some laughed nervously, others whispered that the humans would fall in the next battle. They cannot last, one said. They are broken. Their numbers are too few, but Kalen could not join their talk. He had seen the fire in their eyes. Numbers did not tell the whole story. He walked closer to the edge of the ridge, his gaze fixed on the human camp. Somehow, despite their wounds and their dead, they were alive with energy. They built fires, shared food, tended to their injured. The girl was there too, her armor removed, her face tired but unyielding. She spoke to her people with calm certainty, her words lost in the distance but her presence clear. Kalen felt it like a drumbeat in his chest. That night, Kalen dreamed. He dreamed of battles long past, of his own people fighting with cold precision. He dreamed of victories won by strategy and calculation. But the dream shifted, and he saw humans screaming in defiance, bleeding but still standing, eyes burning like stars. He woke with sweat on his brow. For the first time, he wondered if the reports he wrote would ever capture the truth of what he had seen. Days passed, and the war did not end. Another human city was attacked. Again, Kalen and the observers were sent to watch. He rode in silence with his group, his eyes always searching for the girl among the soldiers. He found her at the city gates, standing with her blade drawn, her voice steady as she rallied her warriors. When the enemy came, it was like thunder. Massive war beasts, armored soldiers, and burning projectiles rained down upon the humans. Kalen braced himself, expecting the humans to crumble. Instead, he watched them form lines, shields raised, voices joined in a roar that shook the ground. They fought not as scattered survivors, but as one body, one spirit. The girl charged first. Her blade flashed, and she cut through the enemy like a storm. Every swing of her weapon seemed to call the humans forward. Every time she fell back, they closed ranks around her. Kalen gripped the ridge's edge until his knuckles turned pale. He wanted to look away, but he could not. Around him, the other observers whispered with unease. "This is not natural," one muttered. "They should be dead already," another shook his head. "They are reckless. They throw their lives away." But Kalen knew better. He could see it in their eyes. They were not throwing their lives away. They were protecting each other, fighting for more than victory. Hours later, when the battle ended, the city still stood. The humans had held. Their enemies, stronger and more numerous, lay broken in the streets. Kalen's chest ached as he watched the girl kneel beside a fallen comrade, her face pale but her eyes still sharp with determination. She whispered something to the dying soldier, and though Kalen could not hear, he knew it was not despair. It was a promise. That night, Kalen sat alone, staring at the blank page before him. His commanders expected a report of weakness, of a doomed species clinging to life. But the words that came to him were different. He wrote of resilience, of unity, of a fire that refused to die. He wrote of the girl, her blade, her command over hearts and spirits. When he finished, he stared at the last line. "If they are broken, then they are the most dangerous broken thing I have ever seen. The next morning, Kellen's superiors demanded details. How many fell? How many remain? How many days until they collapse? Kellen's throat tightened. He wanted to speak the truth, that humans would not collapse, that they would endure. But he forced himself to remain quiet. He gave numbers, statistics, the kind of answers they wanted. Yet deep inside, he felt the truth burning. He looked again toward the human camp, where fires glowed and voices carried through the night. He saw the girl sharpening her blade under the light of the flames, her face calm, her spirit unbroken. Kalen knew then that his regret had only begun. He had been sent to watch, but every battle drew him deeper into their world. Every victory cut another piece of him away, and though he did not admit it out loud, Kalen feared something far worse than their defeat. He feared their survival. Because if humans survived every war they faced, then one day, nothing in the galaxy would stand against them. The days after the second battle felt heavy for Kalen. He tried to remain only an observer, as his orders demanded, but the images of humans would not leave his mind. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, the young girl with fire in her eyes, the wounded carried by their comrades, the shields locked together against hopeless odds. It haunted him, but it also pulled at him in ways he did not understand. When he walked among his fellow observers, he heard their whispers. Some still laughed at the chaos they had seen, saying it was proof of human weakness. Others argued that humans would burn themselves out soon. But Kalen stayed silent. His thoughts were not the same as theirs. He had seen something they had not looked close enough to see. Humans did not burn themselves out. They burned brighter. Another summons came. The humans had been pushed again, this time deeper into their own lands. Their villages were aflame, and the enemy thought victory certain. Kalen rode with the other observers to a high cliff overlooking the valley where the next clash would come. He did not want to go, but orders left him no choice. From the cliff, he saw the humans below, preparing for battle. They were fewer than before, their wounds not yet healed, their armor more broken. And yet, they stood ready. The girl was there again, her hair tied back, her armor scratched but firm. She stood in the front line, her sword resting at her side. Kellen's chest tightened when he saw her. How many times could one person fight and still rise again? The enemy came with thunder. War beasts roared, engines of destruction rolled forward, and soldiers covered the valley in waves. The observers around Kalen murmured with satisfaction. This time they cannot hold. This time it ends. But it did not end. At the first clash, the humans roared like a storm. They charged not away from death, but into it. The girl led them, her blade flashing, her voice carrying through the noise. Kalen leaned forward on the cliff's edge, his heart beating faster than it ever had before. The fighting was brutal. Kalen saw humans fall, but others filled their place. He saw shields splinter, but new ones were raised. He saw the girl wounded on her arm, but she pressed forward without slowing. Every time she struck, the humans around her shouted and fought harder. It was as if she carried the will of the entire army inside her. Kalen realized with horror that he was no longer simply observing. He was holding his breath with every clash of her sword. He was whispering silently when she stumbled. He was hoping for her survival, though his orders told him he should not care. As the sun fell and shadows grew long, the humans began to push the enemy back. The valley floor turned into mud mixed with blood, yet still they moved forward. Kellen's fellow observers shifted uneasily. One of them spat, "Impossible. They should have been finished. What keeps them standing?" Kalen did not answer, but he knew. It was the same thing he had written in his report. They were broken, yes, but their brokenness had hardened into something unshakable. At one point in the battle, the girl lifted her sword high, shouting words Kalen could not hear. But he saw the effect. The humans surged forward as one, driving the enemy into retreat. The valley shook with their advance. Kalen felt his throat close as he watched them force back an army far larger than themselves. When it was over, the humans stood again. Fewer, bloodied, scarred but alive. The girl stood among them, her sword dark with blood, her face pale but unyielding. The valley was theirs. Kalen could not look away. He turned only when one of the observers muttered, "We should never have come here. We should never have seen this." That night, Kalen could not sleep. He sat with his notes, the words blurring before his eyes. What could he write now? That humans had defied every law of battle? That they had turned defeat into survival? That one girl's fire had carried hundreds through death? He pressed his hand to his chest. His heart hurt. He had been told to remain neutral, but neutrality was gone. Each battle was carving pieces of him away, leaving only regret. He whispered into the silence, words meant for no one. I was forced to watch humans in war. What I saw broke me, and it is still breaking me. He closed his eyes, but the girl's face remained, strong, determined, unbroken. And Kalen knew with a cold certainty that this war was not finished. The humans would keep fighting, and he would be forced to keep watching until either they fell, or he did. The war dragged on, and each new battle left Kalen more unsettled. He had thought he would simply observe and report, detached and untouched. But the humans would not allow that. Each time they fought, they pulled something out of him: fear, awe, regret, and now something even heavier: respect. The commanders demanded more detailed reports. They wanted charts, numbers, and predictions. Kalen gave them what he could, but the numbers never told the truth. Numbers could not explain why humans stood when they should have fallen. Numbers could not measure the fire in their eyes. He feared his commanders would never understand what he had seen. Another march came. The humans, though weary, moved to defend a river crossing. If they lost it, the enemy would pour deeper into their land. Kalen and the observers were stationed again on high ground, watching the army below. The river ran wide and dark, reflecting the fires set by the enemy. The human warriors stood at the banks, shields locked together, spears raised. Kalen spotted the girl among them, her armor dented, her sword freshly sharpened. She stood like a stone in the rushing current of fear. The attack came fast. War beasts stormed through the water, enemy soldiers behind them. Arrows rained down, striking shields, striking flesh. Kalen's fellow observers whispered that the humans would drown here. But Kalen gripped the edge of the ridge, unable to believe it. The humans roared, their voices rolling like thunder across the water. They braced their shields against the beasts, their feet digging into the mud, refusing to be swept aside. The girl raised her sword high, shouting words Kalen could not hear, and then she leapt into the river. Kalen's breath caught. She fought waist-deep in the current, slashing at beasts, dragging her wounded comrades back to the shore, her face streaked with water and blood. Every time she struck, the humans surged with new strength. Kalen had seen trained armies fight with skill. He had never seen an army fight with heart like this. The battle raged for hours. The river turned red, the banks littered with bodies. The enemy pushed hard, but the humans held. Kalen's chest burned as he watched them drive the enemy back inch by inch. Finally, the war beasts faltered. The humans surged forward, shouting as one, forcing their enemies to retreat across the river. The humans did not chase them. They stood at the bank, raising their swords and shields, roaring in triumph. The crossing was theirs. Kalen stumbled back from the ridge, his knees weak. Around him, the other observers muttered nervously. One spat on the ground. They are cursed. No one should fight like this. Another shook his head. They are too dangerous. We must never let them grow stronger. Kalen did not answer. His thoughts swirled with confusion. Dangerous, yes. But cursed? No, the humans were not cursed. They were alive in a way no other species was. And Kalen knew, deep inside, that his people were wrong to dismiss them. That night, Kalen did not sleep. He walked alone to the edge of the camp where the observers rested. From there, he could see the human fires burning on the other side of the river. He saw figures moving, laughing even, though their bodies carried wounds. He saw the girl sitting with her comrades, her sword across her lap, her face tired but proud. He whispered into the night, though no one could hear, "Why do you keep standing? Why do you never break?" The answer came not from her lips but from what he saw. The humans were bound to each other in a way Kalen's people had forgotten long ago. They fought not for glory, not for conquest, but for the simple, stubborn will to live and to keep those beside them alive. The next morning, Kalen's report was simple. He did not write numbers or predictions. He wrote only one sentence: "They will not fall." When his commanders read it, they would rage. They would demand explanations, demand proof. But Kalen no longer cared. He had seen enough to know the truth. And as he looked across the river one last time before leaving, he knew something else. Watching the humans had broken him. But it had also opened his eyes. The war was far from over. And Kalen feared that one day he would not just be forced to watch. One day he would be forced to choose. The river crossing should have been the end for the humans. At least, that was what Kalen's commanders believed. Yet they had held it, just as they had held every line before. Each time they were pushed, they rose again. Each time they bled, they fought harder. Kalen was no longer the same man who had first stood on the ridge weeks ago. He was thinner, his face drawn with sleepless nights, his mind filled with memories he could not push away. He had come to observe, but the humans had pulled him deeper into their struggle. He carried their roars in his chest, their blood in his dreams. When the orders came to move again, Kalen felt dread. The enemy had gathered in overwhelming force. The next clash would not be a battle but a storm. The humans had retreated to an old fortress at the edge of the plains. Its walls were cracked and broken, its gates old with rust. It was no place for survival. From the ridge, Kalen saw the humans inside, preparing as best they could. They patched the walls with broken wood, sharpened their spears, and carried water for the wounded. He searched for her, the girl who had become a symbol in his mind. He found her near the gate, speaking to the warriors, her voice steady, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes unshaken. The enemy came with fire. Engines rolled across the plains, hurling burning stones at the fortress. War beasts clawed at the gates. Soldiers in dark armor swarmed the walls. The observers around Kalen leaned forward with hungry eyes, certain this was the end. But once again, it was not. The humans fought like shadows on fire. They filled every crack in the wall, every breach in the gate. They climbed ladders to meet the enemy face to face. Kalen saw the girl fighting on the wall, her blade flashing, her body moving with the rhythm of desperation and hope. The fortress shook with every impact. Kalen's heart pounded as though it too would break. He could not remain still. He found himself whispering, begging silently for them to hold. Around him, the other observers shouted in disbelief. Impossible! They should have fallen already. Hours passed. The walls cracked further. The gate nearly gave way, yet still the humans stood. The girl rallied them again and again, pulling her people together when the line threatened to break. Kalen could not take his eyes off her. She was more than a warrior, now she was the spirit of the entire fortress. At last, the enemy broke through the gate. Kalen's breath caught as hundreds poured inside. The humans should have scattered. Instead, they closed ranks around the breach. Shields locked, blades raised, they held the line. The girl stood in the front, her voice echoing like thunder across the yard. The clash was like nothing Kalen had ever seen. Steel on steel, screams of rage, the thunder of beasts. And then, through the chaos, Kalen saw the girl fall to one knee, blood on her arm and leg. His chest burned with panic. But before the enemy could strike her down, the humans around her formed a wall, covering her, fighting harder than ever. She rose again, her sword trembling but still deadly. With a shout, she drove forward, and the humans surged with her. The enemy began to falter, their lines breaking under the sheer weight of will. When the dust settled, the fortress still stood. Barely, but it stood. The enemy retreated once more, leaving behind their dead and their broken. Kellen's hands shook as he lowered his spyglass. He realized tears had touched his eyes. Around him, the other observers were pale and silent. None of them had words. That night, Kellen wrote his report with heavy hands. His words were no longer for his commanders. They were for himself. They should have died. Yet they lived. They should have broken. Yet they stood. Every rule of war says they cannot endure, yet they do. The humans are more than soldiers. They are storms given flesh. I was sent to watch, but what I have seen will never leave me. I fear them. I respect them. And I regret ever stepping onto this ridge. When he finished, he sat in silence, staring across the plain where the fortress fires glowed. The humans had survived again. But Kellen knew the war was not done. The enemy would return, stronger, more furious. And when they did, Kellen feared that he would no longer be able to remain only an observer. Something inside him was changing. He was no longer certain which side he truly belonged to. The fortress stood, but only just. Its walls were shattered, its gates broken, and its defenders weary beyond words. Kellen thought the humans could not endure another day of war. But he was wrong again. The enemy gathered for a final strike. Rumors spread among the observers that this would be the end, that the humans' last stronghold would fall, and with it, their will. Yet when Kellen looked down into the fortress yard, he saw something very different. The humans were not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight harder than ever before. They bound their wounds, shared their last food, and sharpened their blades. And in the center of it all stood the girl. Her armor was broken, her body bruised and bloodied, but her eyes shone like fire. She walked among her people, touching their shoulders, speaking words that lifted their spirits. Kellen could not hear her voice, but he did not need to. He saw how the soldiers straightened when she passed, how their eyes lit with courage again. The final attack came at dawn. The enemy thundered across the plain, their war beasts roaring, their engines of fire rolling forward. The ground shook with their numbers. The observers around Kellen smiled grimly. "This is it," one whispered. "This is where they fall," but Kellen shook his head. He no longer believed in their fall. He no longer believed in numbers and predictions. He believed in what he had seen again and again. Humans refusing to die. The battle began with fury. Arrows darkened the sky, stones shattered what was left of the walls, and beasts crashed through the gates. The humans roared back, their voices shaking the very earth. Kellen's heart raced as he watched the girl lead the charge. She fought like a storm. Her sword cut through enemy after enemy, her body moving with strength, born not of power but of will. She stumbled, blood dripping from her wounds, yet she rose again each time. Around her, the humans locked shields, pushing forward as one. The enemy broke into the yard. For a moment, it seemed the humans would be crushed under sheer numbers. But then something happened that Kellen would never forget. The girl raised her sword high, her voice rising above the chaos, and every human in the fortress shouted as one. Together they surged forward, not with strength but with a fire so fierce it seemed to set the air itself alight. The enemy faltered. Their beasts roared in confusion, their soldiers stepped back. The humans pressed harder, their eyes wild with defiance, their bodies fueled by something no other species had ever shown. Kellen's breath caught. He had seen armies win through strategy, through weapons, through numbers. But this was different. The humans were winning through sheer will, through unity that no blow could shatter. When the dust settled, the fortress still stood. The enemy had fled, their dead littering the plain. The humans had lost many, but they had not been destroyed. They stood together, broken but unyielding, bloodied but alive. Kalen sank to his knees on the ridge, his chest heavy with emotions he could not name. He had been forced to watch them, to record their battles, to bring back proof of their weakness. But there was no weakness left to record. Only strength. Only fire. That night, Kalen walked away from the other observers. He could not bear their empty words anymore. He walked down toward the edge of the fortress, where fires burned and voices carried in the night. He did not enter, he knew he could not, but he stood close enough to see. The girl sat with her people, her sword across her knees, her face tired but proud. She laughed softly with the wounded beside her, her eyes glowing in the firelight. Kalen's throat tightened. He had come to watch, but he had found something far greater. He whispered into the night, words that would never reach her. You broke me. But in breaking me, you showed me the truth. In his final report, Kalen wrote only a single sentence. If humanity survives this war, then no power in the galaxy will ever contain them. He sealed the report, but he knew it no longer mattered. His commanders would never understand. The truth was not for them. The truth was for him, and for the memory of what he had seen. Ian turned his back on the ridge, his duty finished. He had been ordered to watch humans in war. He had watched them stand, fight, bleed, and rise again. And he knew now that nothing in the stars could ever stop them. He walked into the darkness with a heavy heart, carrying the weight of what he had witnessed. The regret he felt was real, but so was the awe. And though he would never admit it to his people, Kalen knew this war had given him a secret hope, that when the galaxy changed, as it surely would, humanity would be the ones to lead it.